Networks don't talk about it. Government can't tax it. But sports betting is a $200 billion a year business.
That's a major U.S. Supreme Court ruling that could open the door for legalized sports betting all across the country.
The Supreme Court is giving the green light for states to determine on their own whether they want to legalize sports gambling.
Tell Donahue his next pick is good for 20 grand, but I need him to guarantee a win, okay? I need a lock.
He's not that fucking good.
No, Tommy, he has to. All right, he has to, or else they're going to kill me. Do you realize this, Tommy? They're going to fucking kill me. I can't afford to gamble anymore. I need a fucking lock.
And welcome back. Another week of Lock Talk. It is O'Kane here on my own this week. Joey has been busy. I'm busy. You're listening to this a day late. Apologies for that. No Thursday night football coverage. I'm actually watching it right now. Jags currently leading the Saints, but excited to run this back on my own, especially audio only. This is kind of what I've done in the past. So definitely excited to run back my roots a little bit on that one. Some house cleaning stuff last week, 4-3-1 on the pod, 19-12-1 on the podcast in the last 3 weeks. Our boy Joey on fire. I've got his picks. We're going to go through those later. First, 4 college football games. I'm going to briefly touch on those. We've hit the halfway point for the season, and I've got a future to add. And speaking of that list of futures, I'm going to run through the projected finishes as things are looking pretty good. Holy crap, double pass back to Trevor Lawrence that went for maybe 11 yards. Nope, didn't even get the first down. That seemed like a waste. Sorry. Week 7 in the NFL. We've hit the 1/3 point, 33% of the way through the season. We get a nice balanced Sunday, and we're sleeping in. Gotta love that. We're going to see if I can't churn this out in less than 30 minutes. Might even be shorter than that. Let's get it running with college football. Week 8. I'm going to start probably the biggest game of the weekend. Penn State on the road at Ohio State. 4.5 point dogs are the Nittany Lions. Total 45.5. This is the first domino of the Big Ten East that is going to fall. James Franklin and the Nittany Lions, they have covered 13 straight. And if there's an angle that I could suggest, I would ignore the spread for Penn State. Let's look at the first half under. It's going to be drizzly, 50-degree day in Columbus on Saturday. These teams rank 2nd and 3rd in the country in opponent first half scoring. Both of them allow under 5 points per game. I see a similar game to USC, Ohio State and Notre Dame. This was 3-0 Buckeyes at halftime. Personally, I've got 3/4 of a unit on the under at 23 flat. Books have been teetering 23.5, 22.5. I've got mine on Bet Openly, so you can kind of play that how you like. But 3/4 of a unit, like I said, I've been pulling back on the day or week-to-week betting as far as college football goes, but I do like that one. A game that I really don't like, and I'll tell you what, if anybody tells you they have a read on Bama on a week-by-week basis, they're lying. They're currently 8.5 point favorites hosting Tennessee this weekend with a 48.5 total. So much inconsistency at quarterback from both of these sides. It's a game I am so happy to lay off. If you want to bet it, you go right ahead. I'm going to be focusing on Tallahassee. Tallahassee on Saturday. Duke is coming to town. 14.5 point dogs. Little surprised when I saw this line. 49.5 point total. Now, no action for me in the game. I'm 2 wins away from cashing my Duke future. There's 6 games to go. No reason for me to lose any value in that. Now, I'm actually going to add the Noles to my future board to make the playoffs at -130. I've got 3 units on it, and Travis Etienne just scored a touchdown, which rocks for me. 14-3 Jags. Love it. But FSU, after this weekend, Pitt, Wake, Miami, North Bama, Florida. Then it's a date with probably UNC, who I've been on the record many times this year, not as good as advertised. Drake May diced up the ACC's worst and 3rd or 4th worst secondary in the past 2 weeks. People need to relax. Call me crazy because I even think there's a world where they get in with 1 loss. FSU, the hype is as high as it's been since the Jameis era, and it's not even close. They're number 4 in the country right now. So they need to really, really fall, I think, for them to fall out of playoff contention. So I'm adding them to the board. Our last game that I'm going to touch on, Utah, catching 7 at USC. The Trojans have fallen to number 18 in the country after their ugly loss in South Bend last weekend, a game that I actually had the opportunity to go to and didn't. Kicking myself for that, but work stuff happens. This game's going to be labeled a trap, but it's not. Utah, they've played this season really, really well with no quarterback. Cam Rising's backups have 4 touchdown passes on the season. Caleb Williams has 23 himself. I lean the over. USC's defense is god-awful. I know the Utes can't throw the ball. That's fine. They can run against a unit that's only better than Colorado in the Pac-12 against the run. Offensively for SC, it's not going to be easy. Utah is very, very good defensively. They allow just 12 points per game. I would lean the over. I'm not going to play it. I don't have that strong enough of a feeling about it, but should be a very fun game at SC. Let's talk futures. My college football futures, Colorado over 3.5 had plus 120 on that. Big old check mark. 2-unit winner, 2.5 unit winner. 2.4 unit winner. Duke over 6.5 wins, projected 10. USC Pac-12 championship, not looking great. Plus 190, ugly odds. Plus 360 right now, 21% implied odds. This is the one, though. Michael Penix Jr., Heisman, plus 1225. He's currently sitting at minus 140, has a 47% lead over J.J. McCarthy. Love that. Love that. We need that because Braylon Allen is not winning the Heisman at plus 6,500. I already chalked that up as a loss. So if Penix does not win the Heisman, let's play devil's advocate. We'd be projected plus 1.65 units. With Penix, we're looking just a smidge under 5. That would help what's honestly been a really rough college football season. But that happens, man. Let's talk not college anymore. Let's talk NFL because that's really why we do this program. That's why Joey and I started this. It's not college football related. It's NFL related, and it's week 7. Week 7 should be a very interesting one. Structure-wise, we're looking at 6 noon games, 4 late games, and we tie the most buys this week with 6. We'll also get that in week 13. Panthers, Bengals, Cowboys, Texans, Jets, Titans. Keep an eye out on your fantasy teams for those ones. Should be an interesting. Now, big stat. We have been an unders podcast, which nobody really gets popular being the unders podcast. However, if you've been following, I am now 7-0 betting NFL unders this season. NFL unders are hitting at 61%, which is the highest through 6 weeks since 1991. They're hitting at an unprecedented rate. We get a lot of shit for betting unders. So what? If they hit, that's a winning bet. It's not the most fun game to bet, but a lot of the times, the game that you're betting the under on, it's not a game that you're going to be watching anyways. So love betting the unders, going to continue to bet the unders. We've got a few on the schedule this week. Let's start in a game where I actually like the under. Cleveland laying 3 at Indy. Laying 3, laying 2.5, depending what your line is. Obviously, this comes out on Friday. So a 41-point total in this one. Like I said, I kind of like the under. Watson's going to play. He's going to be far from healthy. Cleveland's offense, they rank 31st on third down, 28th in yards per play and sacks allowed, and they turn the ball over more than any other team in the league. Coincidentally, Indy's defense isn't great, but they rank 11th on third down, 11th in sacks, and 15th in yards per play. And do I even need to talk about the Cleveland defense? I mean, this game just screams under to me. I mean, you can expect it on my card. I'll preview. It's not my total of the week, but definitely going to be on my card. 41 points, and it's honestly moving towards 41.5. So really, really like that one. Next game, a game where we should expect at least some points on one side. Buffalo laying 8.5 at New England, 40-point total. The Bills are odd. They obviously looked past New York last week. It showed. They almost lost that game. This week, they should lock in, especially against an opponent that they have daddied over the last 2 years. Since that windy, cold game in Buffalo in 21 where the Pats won, I think, as 10-point dogs, the Bills, they have won 4 straight by double digits, covering each time. Now, I don't hate Buffalo, but New England, this is the largest deficit as far as the spread goes that we've seen at home in the Belichick era. New England's in for a really rough patch here. I would lean Buffalo, may end up taking them later. Not one that I'm locking in quite yet. We'll see what that line does. Next one, an ugly of all ugly games. Vegas is laying 2.5 at Chicago, 37.5 point total. Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell versus Tyson Bagent. He is a D2 All-American, undrafted. Asked my buddy, who's actually, I shouldn't say buddy, asked one of my best men, and I got 2 of them. Shout out my girl for making that very easy on me. But I asked him, he's a Bears fan. I'm like, who is this kid? He's like, he's swaggy, he's tall, he's going to look the part. But at the end of the day, he's a Division II guy. Who the hell knows? So very, very ugly game. If you bet this outside of the under, shame on you. Moving along. Washington laying 3.5 at the New York Jets. New York Giants, rather. 37.5 point total. No, Joey is not fading New York this week, at least officially. Danny Dimes is questionable. He's likely going to play for better or for worse. I don't mind laying a field goal. I'm a little bit hesitant. This matchup has been a shit show historically, and it's got shit show written all over it. Washington team total. It is at or around 20 points. It intrigues me. I'm going to keep an eye on that one as we move further in the week. New York's defense stinks, and their offense puts them in really, really bad situations. So moving on, Atlanta catching 2.5 points at Tampa, 37-point total. Another super low total in this one. The Falcons, they failed to cover in 5 straight. Their offense was totally fine until Desmond Ridder decided that he's just going to throw picks. That's really tough because you can win games as long as you don't turn the ball over, but they're turning the ball over at a very, very high rate. Tampa, they're 6th in forced turnovers. They're 1st in the red zone. It's a game that I'm laying off. I would lean Tampa, but I don't know how much magic there is left in Tampa Bay. It'll be an interesting game to say the least, but probably one of the more interesting games this weekend. And one of the more bet games this weekend are the Lions catching 3 at Baltimore with a 43-point total. Am I crazy, or the Lions just built to handle a team like Baltimore? Their run defense is 5th. On third down, 5th. They have the top run defense. They're 5th on third down, 5th in yards per play. The Ravens offense refuses to get the pass game going. Lamar's going to throw for 250 yards max. He's not going to slice and dice. They're going to keep this in the box. And Detroit does a really good job defensively for that. And honestly, since the Seattle loss, Detroit just takes care of business. They're going to be a super attractive dog come Sunday. It should be a very, very interesting matchup, to say the least. And we're going to find out, how good is this Detroit team going on the road with a tough matchup. Cardinals, Seahawks. Cardinals catching 7.5. Seahawks, 44.5 point total. 3 straight ugly losses for what seemed like a scrappy bunch in Arizona. Seattle needs a bounce back. Had a tight loss in Cincinnati last week. Offense did not look great. The Seahawks, they have won outright as dogs the last 2 times that we've seen these teams, and that was against a better Arizona squad, and I would say a very similar Seattle team. So I don't love the number, but pairing them with somebody else outright, maybe you figure that out with Seattle, or maybe you tease them. Next one is going to be my Packers. My Packers are now laying 1.5 at Denver. We are at a crossroads, ladies and gentlemen. If the Green Bay Packers lose to the Denver Broncos, it is going to get ugly. The Packers played once in the last 3 weeks. It was like 22 or so days, 23 days, they played one game. And they have had as much time off to get healthy, to figure things out offensively. You got basically a mini OTA in the middle of the season. They needed to figure it out, and they didn't figure it out against Vegas. That was about as bad as I've seen it. And they really, 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 really need to find themselves, and it has to come against Denver. So that's what I feel about that. It's a get-right game for Green Bay. Denver still, in my opinion, the worst team in the league. Unbelievably bad. Interesting to see how long they'll let Russell Wilson go. A bad game this week. Who knows? Hard to say. I don't know what their backup plan is, but I'm sure it's not great. Moving along with another late game. Pittsburgh 3-point dogs at the Rams. Total in this one, 44. The Steelers may have the worst offense in the league. Their defense can still get after the quarterback, and in this matchup, Stafford, he's less than mobile. He's been under consistent pressure. Offensively for LA, they've not scored 30 since week 1 and have since really only averaged 21 points. The Steelers, they had 26 points against Cleveland, and other than that, we're looking at a 13-point per game team. So looking at the total at 44, an interesting one to say the least. Let's move along with our Sunday afternoon matchups. It's actually going to be the last Sunday afternoon matchup and probably the marquee matchup of the afternoon. The Chargers, 5.5-point dogs at Kansas City. Total's 48. The public loves LA and the points. Can't imagine why. The Bolts, they've been a trap. Pretty much lined up on a weekly basis. Pick them against Minnesota, 2.5 versus Tennessee, -3 against Miami. Hard to pick their games. In Kansas City, they've covered in 4 or 5 and really should have covered against the Jets. Personally, I lean the over. The last few matchups with these ones, they've finished with totals of 57, 52, 61, 54, and 59. Those are the last 5 matchups. Personally, it's a game that I don't think we should overthink. I think this is a game where you just pull the trigger on it. And speaking of not overthinking, this might be a don't overthink game too. Sunday night's going to be sick. Dolphins, Philly. Dolphins +2.5, total 51.5. A couple of one-loss teams. Kudos to the schedule makers. This one's a treat. Philly bounce back spot, got their wings clipped by the Jets last week. Miami, still a bounce back. They were down 14-0 last week. Obviously, they end up fighting their way through it, but they have to come out better this week. They can't do that against bad teams. They can do that. You can get away with that against teams that are borderline tanking. You can't do that against teams that are trying to win a Super Bowl. Statistically, 2 great offenses. And statistically, 2 bad defenses. Again, don't overthink it. Maybe you rock a Kansas City, LA, Dolphins, Philly tease with the total. Go over. I know that's like negative EV, and those guys fucking get their panties in a bunch, but to me, that just seems like a really nice bet. And a fun bet, to say the least. But let's talk Monday Night Football. 49ers laying 6.5 at the Vikings. Total 44 in this one as well. San Francisco thoroughly embarrassed. We were on the golf course last week. I had San Fran laying 6.5 because I got a fucking awesome line super early in the week. And I'm like, oh, I'm just living in a terrific situation. I wasn't at all. San Francisco thoroughly embarrassed, but they get lucky. That embarrassment gets hijacked by Philadelphia losing to the Jets like 3 hours later. Like, we golfed, that happened. We were having beers after at the bar, and we watched Philly lose. It was a very funny Sunday afternoon, to say the least. You know, it just tells you the NFL, you never know what's going to happen. So let's talk the matchup, though. Prime Kirk Cousins at home. The Vikings got right last week, and I was on the Vikings. I do think the Vikings have the ability to turn a corner. And when I said they're a better team without Justin Jefferson, I wasn't kidding. Gives you the ability to spread things out, make other guys kind of the star of the show. But hard to say. I don't want to say, and I don't think I truly believe that they're a better team without him, but they're a different team. And that different team went out and really, really handled business last week. We'll see how they do as 6.5-point dogs. It should be an interesting one. I'm going to actually talk about that here in a minute, because it's time to get the let out, as my boy Joey would say. We're going to get the let out. We are going to run through our picks for the week. You know how this works. Favorite favorites, favorite dogs, our favorite total, and then a lead pipe lock. Last week, Joey went 2-1-1. He hit Kansas City, the New England Vegas under. He pushed with Oregon, and his lead pipe lock with the Bills fell apart. For me, 2-2, San Francisco and Seattle, both losers. Not a great week for the NFC West. Hit another total, Washington, Atlanta under. That game had no business going under. That was a Desmond Ridder masterclass for those of us that bet the under. And then my lead pipe lock and a winner was the Minnesota Vikings. That's back-to-back lead pipes for your boy. Looking at the last few weeks, week 5, 7-5, week 6, 8-4, week 7, 4-3-1. We are going for 4 straight weeks of winning football. Should be an interesting one. I'm going to rattle off Joey's first. Now, with Joey's favorite, disclaimer, he texted me on Tuesday. The line has moved slightly, but we're still going to give him his line. And if you want it, you can obviously bet it accordingly. He's on the Browns, laying 2.5 at Indianapolis. I don't hate that pick. Indy is in a very strange spot right now. And when the Browns get healthy at quarterback, obviously, things are going to look a little bit different. Obviously, PJ Walker got them a huge win, but emotions are really high. Should be an interesting one at Indianapolis. For me, my favorite, the Packers money line at the Broncos. Yes. And my voice cracked. Perfect timing. Yes, I'm betting the Packers as my favorite. This is as must win as I've ever seen in my lifetime as a Green Bay Packer fan. And yes, I'm being incredibly dramatic. And if they lose, it's not the end of the world. Who the hell knows what the hell is going to happen going forward? But yeah, I like the Packers money line against the Broncos. I think the Broncos are easily the worst team in the league. Looking at the dogs this weekend, interesting pick from Joey, a little bit out of left field. I didn't even touch on this game. Houston Cougars, 23.5-point dogs against Texas at home. We've kind of talked down on Texas. I don't think either of us believe in them. Houston getting 23.5 points, that's a big, big margin. Interested to see how that goes. Looking at my dog, I like the Lions. +3 against the Ravens. Should be about as good of a matchup as you can ask for. I like Detroit here in this one. I kind of talked about it. They're built to beat this team. Best run defense in the league. Top 5 in yards per play. Top 5 in third down conversions. The very important things. That's, to me, my favorite dog. And there's definitely some other dogs out there. We had a hard time finding dogs last week. This week, I think the dogs are back. I think the dogs will be barking again. Let's move to total. Joey is heading back to the well and grabbing the Vegas under, baby. Vegas at Bears under 37.5. It's going to be a stinker. We talked about it. Brian Hoyer / Aiden O'Connell versus Tyson Bagent. I keep wanting to say Baggett, and I don't think I could say that without getting away with, never mind. Yes, under 37.5-point total. I like that total. I do think that game is going to be terrible, but there's a chance that game might pop off. We talked about it with Royal, and we saw it with the Bears against Washington. Those games can, or against Denver, rather. Those games can pop off, but the Raiders are rough. Looking at mine, Steelers-Rams. Under 44. Talked about it a little bit. These two teams, the Steelers, horrible offensively. Sorry, Keeks, if you're listening. That's a bad football team. Steelers, Rams, under 44. Let's bring out the lead. Joey with another one that we didn't talk about this week. Air Force, Navy. Can we get some service team unders? 34.5 points this weekend. I love it. Getting 35 points in a service team game, or I'm not saying that correctly. Service, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but regardless, Air Force Navy, this thing's going to go under. That's just how it goes. I love that. My lead pipe lock of the week, Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. He's going to throw an interception. -120. We're looking at a San Francisco team that led the league in interceptions last year with 20. They've already got 10 and are well on their way to eclipse that number this season. I can't believe that it's at -120. We'll see how it does around kickoff. I think that's a -150 and above by the time they kick that off. So I would get that in early if you can. So running it back, favorites. Joey's got the Browns laying 2.5. I got the Packers money line. Favorite dogs, Joey's got the Houston Cougars +23.5. Lions +3 on my end. Favorite total, Joey's got a Raiders-Bears slop fest under 37.5. I still love that pick. Steelers at Rams on my side under 44. I actually love both of our totals this week. Lead pipe lock, Air Force Navy under 34.5 for Joey. Gonna sweat that one out. I've got Kirk Cousins Monday night throwing a pick. That is going to be it. We got this done in a pretty decent amount of time. I got it 26.5 minutes. Appreciate you guys for listening and to get this out on YouTube, hopefully X, and figure out what we got going on. Should be a very, very interesting weekend. I didn't really expect to have this many NFL games that I like. So should be there are some really ugly matchups, let's be honest. But you'll find some value. I know you guys will. So shout out to everybody that's listening. Make sure you are hopping on Lock Talk, downloading the app. Leave a review in the app if you could. I know Joey's not here, and he does a very good job not pumping the app and trying to overdo it. But you guys should really leave my boy a review. He worked really hard on that, and Paulie as well. Shout out Paulie. So we'll get this out. Very nice talking to all y'all, and we'll talk to you next week, hopefully with my boy Joey, and you'll be able to see my beautifully red face. Talk to you later.